The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, appearing simultaneously on every major communication network across Earth. Scientists at the International Space Station saw it first, a stream of mathematical equations that made their computers crash and restart 3 times before finally displaying something that looked like text. Hyunwoo. Kim was drinking his second cup of coffee in his small office at the United Nations building when his assistant burst through the door. Her face was pale, and she held a tablet with shaking hands. "Sir, you need to see this," she said, placing the device on his desk. The message was simple, written in perfect English despite arriving as pure mathematics. It read, "The Galactic Council of Sentient Species requests the presence of a human representative at the Central Station. Coordinates and travel arrangements will be provided upon acceptance. This is a standard integration protocol for newly discovered civilizations." Hyunwoo read it twice, then looked up at his assistant. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No, sir." It appeared everywhere at once. NASA confirmed it came from deep space. The signal strength would require technology we don't have. Within hours, every government on Earth was in emergency session. The message had been accompanied by star charts showing the location of something called the Central Station, built around a dying star thousands of light years away. More disturbing were the technical specifications for a faster-than-light communication device that actually worked when Earth's scientists built it according to the alien instructions. 3 days later, Hyunwoo found himself in a secure briefing room with the world's most powerful leaders. President Martinez of the Americas Union spoke first. "We've confirmed the message is genuine. The aliens, the Galactic Council, have sent detailed plans for upgrading one of our deep space probes for interstellar travel. They want to meet with us." "The question is who goes," said Chancellor Weber from the European Federation. This could be the most important moment in human history. All eyes turned to Hyunwoo. He had spent 20 years in the military before becoming a diplomat, serving in conflicts across 3 continents. He understood both war and peace, which made him valuable in delicate situations. More importantly, he had a reputation for staying calm when everything went wrong. "Why me?" Hyunwoo asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Because you don't panic," said Director Yamamoto from the Pacific Alliance, "and because you understand power. If these aliens are as advanced as they seem, we need someone who won't be intimidated." The enhanced probe launched 2 weeks later with Hyunwoo aboard, along with Dr. Ji-Hai Park, Earth's leading expert on alien biology, and Commander Tae-min Lee, a military strategist whose job was to observe everything and report back to Earth's defense networks. The journey took 6 days through something the aliens called fold space. Hyunwoo spent the time studying everything humanity had learned about the Galactic Council from their initial communications. The information was limited, but disturbing. The Council consisted of 12 ancient alien species who had controlled the galaxy for over 3,000 years. They divided space into sectors, managed trade between civilizations, and maintained something they called galactic stability. New species were integrated into this system through a process that seemed to involve giving up independence in exchange for protection and technology. "Look at this," Ji-Hai said on the 4th day, showing Hyunwoo her analysis. "Every species they've integrated follows the same pattern. First contact, invitation to the council, integration ceremony, then nothing. No independent communications, no separate trade agreements, no individual diplomatic relations. It's like they disappear as separate civilizations." "Maybe they're just happy being part of something bigger," Tae-min suggested, but his tone indicated he didn't believe it. "Or maybe they don't have a choice," Hyunwoo said quietly. The Central Station was visible long before their probe's sensors could measure it properly. Built around a red giant star, it was a massive ring structure that harvested the star's energy to power a civilization spanning thousands of worlds. Smaller rings orbited within the main structure, connected by bridges of light that bent space itself. As their probe was guided to a docking bay, Hyunwoo could see hundreds of different designs representing dozens of alien species. Some were elegant flowing curves that suggested aquatic origins. Others were harsh, angular constructions that looked built for war. A few seemed to be made of pure energy, held together by forces he couldn't understand. "Remember," Hyun-woo told his companions as they prepared to disembark, "we're here to listen and learn. Don't commit to anything. Don't agree to anything, and don't let them rush us into decisions." The docking bay was filled with aliens. Tall, crystalline beings that looked like living gemstones directed traffic with musical tones. Insect-like. Creatures with too many arms moved cargo with mechanical precision. Floating clouds of gas pulsed with internal lights as they communicated in colors rather than words. A translation device was waiting for them, a small metal disc that attached behind the ear and provided instant understanding of any language. As soon as Hyun-woo put it on, the chaos around him became organized. The musical tones were actually complex instructions. The insect creatures were discussing shipping schedules. The gas clouds were gossiping about politics. Their guide was a humanoid figure with blue skin and silver eyes who introduced himself as Koldan, a junior aide to the council. He led them through corridors that seemed to go on forever, past windows showing views of space that made Hyun-woo's head spin. "The council is eager to meet you," Koldan said as they walked. "Humans are quite unusual. Most species are discovered when they achieve interstellar travel. You were found while still confined to a single world, yet you show remarkable technological adaptability. Is that good or bad?" Ji-hai asked. Koldan's expression was unreadable. "The council will decide." They stopped at a massive door made of what looked like liquid metal. Beyond it lay the council chamber, an enormous space where 12 raised platforms surrounded a central speaking area. Each platform held a different alien species, some recognizable as living beings, others so strange that Hyun-woo couldn't determine if they were organic or mechanical. "Tomorrow you will address the council," Koldan explained. "They will explain the integration process and formally welcome humanity to galactic civilization. It's a great honor. Most species wait centuries for such recognition." That night, in quarters provided by their hosts, Hyun-woo sat by a window looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, small and blue and independent. Tomorrow that might change forever. "What do you think?" Taemin asked, joining him at the window. "I think we're about to learn what it costs to join the galaxy," Hyun-woo replied. "And I'm not sure we're going to like the price." The council chamber was even more impressive in the artificial daylight. 12 massive platforms rose from the floor like ancient thrones, each one designed for a different type of alien life. The crystalline beings, called Vorthak, occupied platforms that amplified their musical communication into complex harmonies. The gas creatures known as ethereals floated in contained energy fields that let them maintain their forms in the station's atmosphere. Hyun-woo walked to the center speaking area with Ji-hai and Taemin following behind. Around the edges of the chamber, he noticed dozens of other aliens watching from smaller platforms. These weren't council members, he realized. They were representatives from other species. But they sat in silence like an audience rather than participants. The largest platform belonged to the Vorthak, and from it descended a being that looked like a walking crystal formation. Its body was made of blue and silver minerals that caught the light and threw it back in complex patterns. When it spoke, the translation device in Hyun-woo's ear converted musical tones into words. "I am Vextalon, speaker for the Galactic Council," the being announced. "We welcome the species known as humans to this gathering. You have been selected for integration into galactic civilization." The word "selected" bothered Hyun-woo immediately. Not invited, not asked. Selected. Vextalon continued with what was clearly a prepared speech. "For 3,000 Earth years, the Council has maintained peace and prosperity across 10,000 inhabited worlds. We have eliminated war, poverty, and suffering through careful management of resources and populations. Every species benefits from our guidance." Ji-hai was studying the other alien representatives with scientific curiosity. She noticed how they sat perfectly still, never interrupting or asking questions. Some looked like they wanted to speak, but didn't dare. Others seemed resigned, as if they had heard this speech many times before. "The integration process is simple," Vextalon explained. Your species will be classified according to your useful traits. Humans show promise in several areas: manual labor, creative thinking, and biological adaptability. You will be assigned worlds suitable for your needs and given tasks that match your capabilities. Taman was recording everything through his equipment, but he was also watching the military positions around the chamber. Armed guards from the insect-like Chitauri stood at every entrance. Their weapons were unlike anything Earth had developed, but their positioning showed they were there to prevent problems, not protect against outside threats. In return for integration, Vex Talon continued, humanity will receive advanced technology, protection from hostile forces, and the privilege of contributing to galactic civilization. Your population will be managed to prevent overgrowth and resource depletion. Your government will be advised by council representatives to ensure efficient administration. The more Vex Talon spoke, the clearer it became that integration meant the end of human independence. Hyunwoo listened without changing expression, but inside he was analyzing every word like a battle plan. Your genetic material will be added to the council archives for future study. Promising individuals will be selected for advanced education and specialized roles. The remainder will be settled on agricultural and industrial worlds where they can live comfortable, productive lives under council guidance. A floating ethereal drifted forward, its gaseous form pulsing with soft colors. I am Zalthera of the Communication Collective. We have studied your species' transmissions and find your entertainment media particularly interesting. Human creativity will be a valuable addition to galactic culture, properly directed. Properly directed. Another phrase that made Hyunwoo's teeth clench. Some of your cultural practices will need modification, Zalthera continued. Concepts like individual nations and competitive politics cause unnecessary conflict. These will be phased out as you adapt to council administration. Jihai realized what she was hearing. This wasn't a partnership or alliance. It was absorption. Humanity would cease to exist as an independent species and become workers in someone else's empire. A third council member spoke, one of the Chitauri, whose insect-like form clicked and buzzed as the translator turned its words into human speech. I am General Cricksmole of the Military Coordination Branch. Some species initially resist integration due to primitive territorial instincts. This resistance always passes once the benefits of council membership become clear. The general's words carried a subtle threat. Resistance was expected, but it would not be tolerated for long. The process has worked successfully for over 2,000 species, Vex Talon resumed. Each has found peace and prosperity under council guidance. Wars have ended, resource conflicts have been eliminated, population growth has been stabilized. Crime and social disorder have been reduced to negligible levels. Hyunwoo finally understood what he was seeing in the silent alien representatives around the chamber. They weren't guests or partners. They were exhibits, examples of successful integration who had given up their independence so completely that they no longer remembered how to speak for themselves. Your transition period will last approximately 10 Earth years, Vex Talon explained. During this time, council advisors will help restructure your government, economy, and social systems. Resistant populations will be relocated to worlds better suited for their psychological adjustment. Educational programs will help younger generations adapt to galactic citizenship. The phrase, resistant populations will be relocated, sent a chill through Hyunwoo's military-trained mind. He had heard similar language in history books about ethnic cleansing and forced resettlement. At the end of the transition period, humanity will be fully integrated into galactic civilization. Your homeworld will be managed by council representatives. Your people will live peaceful, productive lives contributing to the greater good of all species. Vex Talon's crystal form brightened as it concluded the speech. This is a great honor, humans. Few species are selected for integration so quickly after discovery. Usually, we wait for civilizations to achieve interstellar travel on their own, which can take thousands of years. Your rapid technological adaptation has impressed the Council. The speaker gestured toward the silent alien representatives. These beings represent some of our most successful integrations. The Deltari, it indicated a group of pale, thin humanoids, were integrated 400 years ago, and now manage agricultural production across 3 sectors. The Korthran, it pointed to stocky, muscular beings with gray skin, joined us 600 years ago and excel at industrial manufacturing. Jihai noticed that none of these successfully integrated species looked happy. They sat with the posture of people who had given up hope long ago. "Do you have any questions about the integration process?" Vextalon asked, its tone suggesting that questions were permitted but not particularly welcome. Hyun-woo looked up at the 12 council platforms, then at the silent representatives around the chamber's edge. He thought of Earth, messy, chaotic, argumentative Earth where every nation jealously guarded its independence and every citizen believed they had the right to speak their mind. "Just one question," Hyun-woo said clearly. "What if we refuse?" The chamber fell completely silent. Even the background hum of the station's machinery seemed to stop. Vextalon's crystal form flickered through several colors before settling on a deep red that the translation device somehow conveyed as confusion and alarm. "I'm sorry," Vextalon said finally. "Could you repeat that? What if humanity refuses integration?" The silence stretched longer this time. Around the chamber, some of the integrated species representatives had turned to stare at Hyun-woo with expressions of shock, hope, and terror. General Krixmol's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sound the translator didn't even attempt to convert to words. Hyun-woo stood in the center of the chamber, feeling the weight of 12 ancient civilizations staring down at him. The silence stretched so long that he could hear his own heartbeat. Around the edges of the chamber, the integrated species representatives leaned forward in their seats, as if straining to hear something they had never heard before. Vextalon's crystalline form shifted through several colors before settling on a pale blue that somehow conveyed bewilderment. "Refuse? I don't understand the concept in this context." "It's simple," Hyun-woo replied, his voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. "Humanity appreciates the offer, but we choose to remain independent. We're willing to establish trade relationships, cultural exchanges, and mutual defense agreements with any species that approaches us as equals, but we will not submit to integration." The word equals rippled through the chamber like a physical force. Several council members made sounds that the translator couldn't interpret, musical tones from the Vorthak, electromagnetic pulses from the ethereals, rapid clicking from the Chitauri that sounded like machine gun fire. General Krixmol was the first to recover. "You misunderstand the nature of this proceeding, human. This is not a negotiation. Integration is mandatory for all species within council space. Your system falls within our territorial boundaries." "According to whose authority?" Hyun-woo asked, calmly. "According to 3,000 years of precedent," Vextalon replied, its form now glowing angry red. "According to the natural order of galactic civilization. According to the simple fact that we possess the power to enforce our decisions." Hyun-woo nodded thoughtfully. "So you're saying that might makes right?" "We're saying that advanced civilizations have a responsibility to guide primitive ones," Zalthera interjected, her gaseous form pulsing with agitated colors. "Left alone, young species inevitably destroy themselves through war, resource depletion, or technological accidents. Integration prevents such tragedies." "Has any species ever been given the choice?" Hyun-woo asked. Another long silence. Finally, Vextalon spoke. "Choice is an illusion that leads to chaos. The Council provides stability, order, and purpose. Individual desires must be subordinated to the greater good." "Whose greater good?" "The galaxy's," General Krixmol snapped. "Look around you, human. Do you see poverty, war, suffering? Council administration has eliminated these problems." Hyun-woo did look around, taking in the silent representatives of integrated species. "I see beings who have forgotten how to speak for themselves." A gasp went up from several of the integrated representatives. Some covered their mouths in shock. Others looked terrified at hearing such words spoken aloud in the council chamber. Vextalon's crystal form flared brighter. "Your primitive mindset prevents you from understanding the benefits of integration. In time, you will adapt." "Will we?" Hyun-woo asked. "Because from where I stand, It looks like integration means the death of everything. That makes a species unique. You've turned proud civilizations into worker drones. Taman was monitoring Council communications through his equipment, and the chatter was increasing rapidly. Alert signals were being sent to military commanders throughout Council space. This conversation was going places the Council had never experienced. Your resistance is noted, General Krigsmall said with forced calm. However, integration will proceed according to standard protocol. Council forces are already moving toward your system to begin preliminary surveys. Then you should recall them, Hyunwoo said simply. Zalthera floated closer, her electromagnetic field crackling with barely controlled energy. You speak as though you have the power to resist the combined might of 12 ancient civilizations. Your species has barely achieved spaceflight. You're right, Hyunwoo agreed. We're young, primitive, and completely outgunned. But we have something you've forgotten exists. Which is? The willingness to say no. The phrase hit the chamber like a bomb. Around the edges, some of the integrated representatives were beginning to whisper among themselves. Quiet conversations that hadn't happened in council chambers for centuries. Saying no is not an option, Vextalon declared. Integration is inevitable. The only question is whether it proceeds peacefully or requires enforcement. Hyunwoo smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. There's that word again, enforcement. You keep talking about the greater good and galactic civilization, but it always comes back to force, doesn't it? Order requires structure, General Krigsmall replied. Structure requires authority. Authority requires the power to enforce compliance. And there it is, Hyunwoo said, turning to address not just the council, but all the silent representatives around the chamber. The truth behind all the pretty words about peace and prosperity. Submit or die. Ji-Hai was studying the biological responses of the various alien species. Many showed signs of emotional agitation, faster breathing patterns in oxygen breathers, electrical fluctuations in energy-based life forms, changes in posture and coloration in others. The idea of resistance was having a profound effect on beings who had been taught it was impossible. Your defiance is pointless, Vextalon said, but there was something new in its tone, uncertainty. What do you hope to accomplish? Even if your entire species fights to the last individual, you cannot defeat the council. Maybe not, Hyunwoo admitted. But we can show everyone in this chamber that fighting is possible. That saying no is an option. That there's something worth dying for that's more important than survival. And what is that? Zalthera demanded. Freedom. The word seemed to echo through the chamber long after Hyunwoo spoke it. Freedom. Such a simple concept, but one that had been absent from council space for so long that many species had forgotten it existed. Freedom is chaos, General Krigsmall stated. Freedom is conflict and waste and unnecessary suffering. Freedom is choice, Hyunwoo replied. The choice to succeed or fail on your own terms. The choice to make mistakes and learn from them. The choice to be different from everyone else, even if it's harder. Around the chamber, something unprecedented was happening. One of the Deltari representatives, a pale, thin humanoid whose species had been integrated 400 years ago, slowly stood up. The movement was small, barely noticeable, but in a chamber where integrated species never moved without permission, it was revolutionary. Then a Korthran representative stood. Then another Deltari. Then members of species Hyunwoo didn't recognize, beings whose civilizations had been absorbed so long ago that their names were forgotten. Sit down, General Krigsmall commanded, but his voice lacked conviction. This had never happened before. More representatives stood. Not all of them. Many remained seated, too conditioned by centuries of submission to move. But enough to show that the spirit of resistance wasn't dead, only sleeping. This is what you're afraid of, Hyunwoo said to the council. Not humanity's weapons or technology. You're afraid that if one species says no and means it, others might remember that they have the same right. Vextalon's crystal form was cycling, through colors so rapidly it looked like a strobe light. Council recess, it announced. Clear the chamber. Security protocols are now in effect. Chitari guards moved in from all entrances, but they seemed unsure of their targets. The standing representatives weren't attacking anyone or breaking any specific rules. They were just standing up, literally and figuratively. As the guards approached, Hyunwoo called out in a voice that carried to every corner of the chamber, "Remember this moment. Remember that you have the right to stand. You have the right to choose. You have the right to be free." The last thing he saw before the guards escorted him out was a Deltari representative raising her fist in the air, a gesture of defiance that her species hadn't made in 4 centuries. The revolution had begun with a single word: no. The chamber had been rearranged overnight. The platforms where integrated species representatives once sat were now empty, their occupants confined to their quarters for their own protection. Only the 12 council platforms remained active, along with additional security stations manned by Chitauri warriors whose weapons were now openly displayed. Hyunwoo was escorted back to the center speaking area by 6 guards, their insect-like forms clicking with mechanical precision. Jihai and Taemin were positioned at the chamber's edge under heavy watch, their recording equipment confiscated. General Krixmol spoke first, his mandibles spreading wide in what the translator interpreted as aggressive display. "Your behavior yesterday was unacceptable. You corrupted a sacred proceeding with primitive concepts that have no place in civilized discourse." "Sacred to whom?" Hyunwoo asked. "Certainly not to the species you've silenced." "Those species are grateful for council guidance," Vextalon interrupted, its crystalline form a steady, angry red. "They understand that individual desires must be subordinated to collective needs. Is that why you locked them up? Because they're so grateful?" The council members exchanged rapid communications in frequencies the translation device couldn't interpret. Finally, General Krixmol gestured to one of the chamber's massive wall screens, which lit up with images that made Hyunwoo's stomach turn. "Perhaps you require a demonstration of what resistance accomplishes," the general said. "This is the Valdari system, formerly home to a species that refused integration 200 years ago." The screen showed dead worlds, planets stripped of atmosphere, their surfaces cracked and lifeless. Space debris floated where cities once stood. What had been a solar system was now a graveyard. The Valdari believed their freedom was worth fighting for. General Krixmol continued. They resisted for 37 years. Their resistance ended when their sun was destabilized, sterilizing every world in their system. Hyunwoo studied the images without flinching, though inside he was calculating the energy requirements for such destruction. The Council had weapons that could kill stars. Earth's defenses wouldn't last 37 minutes, let alone 37 years. "Here," General Krixmol said, switching to new images, "is the Nexari system. They resisted for 15 years before, accepting integration. Notice how much of their civilization survived compared to the Valdari." The new images showed worlds with cities, but they were alien cities. The architecture was wrong for the species that had built them, replaced with standardized council structures. The beings walking the streets moved with the same defeated posture as the integrated representatives Hyunwoo had seen in the chamber. "The choice is simple," Vextalon said. "Peaceful integration preserves your species and culture. Violent resistance ensures extinction." "What culture?" Hyunwoo asked. "I don't see any Nexari culture in those images. I see council buildings, council administration, council everything. Where are the Nexari?" "They are there," Zalthera replied, her gaseous form pulsing with subdued colors. "Living peaceful, productive lives under proper guidance." "Living as slaves, you mean?" "As citizens of galactic civilization," General Krixmol corrected harshly. "Your primitive terminology reveals your inability to understand advanced social concepts." Taemin was watching the security arrangements while trying to look like he wasn't. The Council had tripled their military presence overnight. Ships were moving throughout the station, and communication traffic was at emergency levels. Hyunwoo's words had triggered something close to panic in the galactic government. "Let me show you Earth's future," General Krixmol said, bringing up new images on the screen. "Council surveyors have already identified optimal locations for processing centers. Your population will be sorted according to aptitude and assigned to appropriate worlds. Useful genetic material will be preserved for future generations. The images showed Earth from space, but with markers indicating where major cities would be demolished and replaced with council facilities. Yunwu recognized the patterns from history. Concentration camps, reservations, processing centers where inconvenient populations were managed out of existence. Your children will receive proper education in council schools, Vex Talon added. Within 2 generations, they will be fully integrated galactic citizens with no memory of primitive human concepts like national identity or individual rights. No memory of freedom, Hyunwoo said quietly. No burden of meaningless choices, General Crixamol corrected. They will live useful, purposeful lives serving the greater good. Jihai was studying the biological responses of the council members. Despite their confident words, they were showing signs of stress. Vex Talon's crystal form was flickering with unstable colors. Zalthera's electromagnetic field was fluctuating irregularly. General Crixmol's mandibles were clicking in patterns that suggested agitation rather than confidence. Why are you so afraid of one primitive species? Hyunwoo asked suddenly. We are not afraid, Vex Talon replied too quickly. We are simply following standard protocols for dealing with resistant populations. Standard protocols? How many species have actually resisted? Really resisted, not just asked questions or requested modifications? Another rapid exchange of untranslatable communications passed between council members. Finally, General Crixamol spoke. The Valdari were the last to offer significant resistance. Before them, there were perhaps a dozen others in 3,000 years. So out of 2,000 integrated species, only a dozen fought back? Resistance is illogical when the outcome is predetermined, Zalthera said. Most species recognize this reality. Or most species never had the chance to consider resistance because you eliminated anyone who might inspire it before they could speak. The accuracy of Hyunwoo's guess was confirmed by the council's sudden silence. They had learned from the Valdari and other resistant species. Leaders who might inspire rebellion were identified and removed during the early stages of integration, before they could organize opposition. You made a mistake with humanity, Hyunwoo continued. You invited our leaders here instead of eliminating them. You let us see your system from the inside, and now we know something you don't want other species to learn. Which is, General, Crixmol demanded, that your empire depends on everyone believing resistance is impossible. But it's not impossible. It's just difficult. And some things are worth dying for. Hyunwoo turned to look directly at the chamber's recording systems, knowing his words would be transmitted throughout council space, whether the leaders wanted it or not. To every species that can hear this, you have the right to be free. You have the right to say no. You have the right to live by your own choices, even if those choices lead to failure. Enough! Vex Talon's form blazed brilliant white. Council forces are moving toward your system now. 12 battle fleets with weapons, capable of sterilizing worlds. Your resistance will accomplish nothing except the extinction of your species. Maybe, Hyunwoo agreed. But at least we'll die as humans, not as domesticated animals in your galactic zoo. General Crixmol gestured sharply, and the wall screens changed to show tactical displays of council fleets in motion. Hundreds of ships, each one larger than anything Earth had ever built, were moving toward the outer rim where humanity's home system waited. You have 72 hours to reconsider, the general announced. Contact your government. Explain the reality of your situation. Recommend immediate surrender to minimize casualties. And if we refuse? Then Earth dies, General Crixmol said, simply. Along with every human in the galaxy, this is your final opportunity to save your species. As guards moved to escort him back to his quarters, Hyunwoo spoke one last time to the recording systems. 72 hours. Remember that number. In 72 hours, we'll show the galaxy what happens when free people decide they'd rather die than live as slaves. The chamber fell silent except for the mechanical clicking of Chitauri weapons being readied for use. The quarters where Hyunwoo was confined had a window overlooking one of the station's main transit hubs. For 18 hours, he watched normal traffic flow through the corridors, aliens going about their daily business, cargo being moved, ships arriving and departing. It looked peaceful, orderly, exactly what the Council claimed to provide. But then the pattern changed. HFY was the first to notice it during their brief supervised meeting. The integrated species representatives aren't in their quarters anymore, she whispered while their Chitauri guard pretended not to listen. I've been watching the transit hub and I saw groups of them moving through the station. Moving where? Hyunwoo asked quietly. I don't know, but they're moving together. Species that never interact are traveling in mixed groups. Taemin had been monitoring what little communications traffic he could access through the room's basics systems. There's something else. I'm picking up encrypted transmissions using protocols I don't recognize. Old protocols like they've been hidden for centuries. Within 6 hours, the truth became impossible to hide. The integrated species weren't just meeting, they were organizing. 400 years of suppressed anger and forgotten dreams of freedom were awakening across the station. The first open sign of rebellion came during the third day. Hyunwoo was being escorted to another council session when the corridor lights began flashing in patterns that the translation device interpreted as emergency signals. But these weren't council emergency codes. They were messages in languages that had been banned for centuries. What is that? General Krixmol demanded, as his guards reported similar signals throughout the station. Freedom, came a voice from the chamber entrance. Yulmarin of the Deltari walked into the council chamber without permission or escort. Behind her came Nextaba of the Korthran, followed by representatives from a dozen other integrated species. They moved with purpose, their posture no longer showing the defeated resignation Hyunwoo had seen before. Return to your quarters immediately, General Krixmol commanded, but his mandibles were clicking with uncertainty. No, Yulmarin said simply. The word was spoken in accented council standard, but her people's original language was older, more musical. We refuse. The chamber filled with the sound of Chitauri weapons powering up, but the integrated representatives didn't stop moving. More were entering behind the first group, beings from species whose names had been forgotten, whose cultures had been erased, whose identities had been buried under centuries of council administration. You are in violation of station regulations, Vextalon announced, its crystal form cycling through warning colors. Submit to security processing immediately. We submit to nothing, Nextaba replied in his species' deep rumbling voice. Never again. Selthera floated forward, her gaseous form crackling with electromagnetic energy. You have been corrupted by human primitive concepts. Return to your quarters, and medical treatment will be provided for your condition. Our condition, Yulmaren laughed bitterly, is remembering who we used to be. Hyunwoo watched in amazement as more representatives entered the chamber. These weren't random protesters. They moved with coordination that suggested planning, preparation, organization. Somehow, in the few days since his first speech, the integrated species had rediscovered the ability to work together. How? General, Krixmol demanded, how are you communicating? All personal devices were confiscated, all networks are monitored. We don't need your technology to talk to each other, Nextaba replied. We've been talking in the food dispensaries, in the maintenance tunnels, in the recycling centers where your surveillance doesn't reach. We've been remembering. Taemin realized what was happening. The integrated species had been invisible to the council for so long that their overseers had stopped paying attention. Janitors, food service workers, maintenance technicians, all the people who kept the station running while the council members focused on important matters. They had been free to move and communicate because they were considered harmless. Remembering, what? Vextalon asked with what sounded like genuine confusion. Our names, Yulmarin said, our languages, our songs, our stories, our children's faces before they were taken for proper education, our worlds before they were improved with council architecture. The chamber was filling rapidly now, not just with integrated species representatives, but with their support, staff, their technical workers, their forgotten populations. Hundreds of beings who had been erased from council consideration were suddenly visible again. You will disperse immediately, General Krixmol commanded, or face consequences. What consequences? Nextaba asked with a laugh that sounded like rocks grinding together. Extinction? You already gave us that slowly, over centuries, one generation at a time. Jihi was studying the crowd dynamics with scientific fascination. The integrated species weren't just angry, they were organized. Different groups were positioning themselves at key locations around the chamber, blocking access routes and communication nodes. This wasn't a spontaneous uprising, it was a planned revolution. This is impossible, Salthera pulsed with agitated colors. You lack the technological capability for organized resistance. Your communication networks are monitored. Your leadership was eliminated centuries ago. You eliminated our leaders, Yulmarin agreed. But you didn't eliminate our memories. We passed them down in songs our children sang, in stories we told in the dark, in small rebellions you never noticed because we were too insignificant to matter. Hyunwoo stepped forward. You made the same mistake every tyrant makes. You assumed that silence meant acceptance. This changes nothing, Vextalon declared, but its crystal form was flickering with unstable colors. Council forces still approach. Your system, your species will still face extinction, will they? Nextaba asked. Because while you've been threatening humans, we've been remembering other things, like where your ships refuel, where your supply lines run, where your communication hubs are located. General Krixmol's mandibles spread wide in alarm. You wouldn't dare attack Council infrastructure. Why not? Yulmarin asked. We built most of it. We maintain all of it. We know exactly how to break it. Alarms began sounding throughout the station as reports came in from across Council space. Supply depots were shutting down. Communication networks were failing. Refueling. Stations were experiencing mysterious technical difficulties. The integrated species had been running the Council's empire for centuries, and now they were systematically dismantling it. Stop this immediately, Vextalon commanded. Council, forces will suppress any uprising with overwhelming force. With what forces? Taman asked, checking his monitoring equipment. Your fleets need fuel, spare parts, navigation data, and technical support, all provided by integrated species. What happens when that support disappears? The truth was already becoming apparent on the Council's tactical displays. Ships were reporting engine failures, communication blackouts, navigation errors. The carefully coordinated attack on Earth was falling apart as the invisible foundations of Council power crumbled. You see, Hyunwoo said to the Council members, you made your empire too efficient. You gave all the actual work to slaves while you sat on platforms making speeches. Now the slaves remember they're not slaves. They're people. And people can choose not to cooperate. This is temporary madness, General Krixmol insisted. Order will be restored. Not this time, Yulmarin replied. Because now we know something we forgot long ago. We know that when someone says no and means it, the whole galaxy can hear them. Around the chamber, integrated species representatives from dozens of worlds were raising their fists, their tentacles, their appendages in gestures of defiance that their people hadn't made in centuries. The silence of 3,000 years was finally broken. And across Council space, on worlds where beings had forgotten their own names, the revolution was spreading faster than any fleet could travel.